today the world is a very different place than it was in 1948. But despite that, our main reference document on human rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is the same document. And so we have the same right to privacy today as we did in 1948 when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was first published. Yet it is perhaps in the area of communications technology that our world has changed so much today compared to 1948. The theme of the panel is, what if Eleanor Roosevelt had an iPad?
What we've seen at IBM and the tech industry overall is basically 3 phases of privacy. Photography, image. Your image could be captured, transmitted anywhere, led to very famous concept of the right to be left alone, and people not taking your image and misappropriating it and doing bad things to your image, and the proliferation of news media and that sort of thing. Fast forward, what we saw in the 60s, 50s, 70s at IBM was, oh, you've got big computers now, lots of data, centralized. You got to have a response to that. The actions at that era led to the OECD, I think partly drawing from the UN Convention, creating a set of global guidelines that exist to this day, dating from now the 1980s, and a whole number of laws there. Fast forward to today, what's different about today? I'd say one of the big differences is the amount of information. That's one of the big I's here. But some of the other I's that we're encountering here is that things are instrumented. You get lots of different smart pieces of technology that are gathering information, transmitting information. That's instrumented. They're interconnected. You have more ability to gather insights from the information, so you get more intelligence out of it. And the role of the individual, 5th I, is different now. We're no longer a data subject or a victim or somebody who gets photographed. We're very much part of this. So that's one way to characterize the journey that we've been on, and why this increased amount of complexity, I think, has made it much more relevant to folks who are leaders in industries way beyond tech.
We're in the midst of a data revolution. And I really see, you're right, Harriet, it's the amount of data, but it's also the ability to process that data in ways that are leading to enormous changes to our society, and most of which are really great. The Green Revolution I ran using Twitter, you can see what is capable with this kind of interaction with the use of this data. But on the flip side of that, what we're seeing is this enormous ramp up. As Harriet said, it's getting more and faster, is going to mean that the other side of it has to catch up and be even more aggressive in terms of making sure that our free expression rights are preserved, making sure our privacy rights are preserved. And then I think that's going to be the challenge. That's what Google has seen in its short time. The trick is going to be, how do we continue to harness these amazing benefits from the data, from the technology, without losing some of our core values, our core rights like privacy?
So Rebecca, with you, I'm going to take it much further back in history than 100 years. You said to me once that the internet is so significant that we're at a new Magna Carta moment. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Sure. The problem is it's sort of nobody's in charge and everybody's in charge at the same time, and who's governing the space and who's making the decisions about what we can and cannot do. And this is also a very globally interconnected space. So decisions that Facebook makes about privacy settings not only have implications for teenagers in Northern California, but for Iranian dissidents or Egyptian activists who are trying to use this platform. Now, going back to this Magna Carta moment and why I use this, when you get to a point in which society begins to feel that the sort of existing mechanisms of governance or just kind of running the space no longer fits their interests, you can either have the people who hold the power make a shift, or there's some nasty revolutions that happen and somebody gets guillotined. But we're really hitting uncharted territory where nobody quite knows where it's going, and there's a real power struggle, I think, developing.
So this raises for me, I think, the issue of public policy. How fluent do you think policymakers are today in technology?
The fluency and the discourse has definitely gotten more sophisticated. So the debate in the 90s was about web privacy, cookies, kind of the web 1.0 era was, oh my God, cookies are looking at what you're doing on the computer. And there were some simple answers put forward, and you know what? After 10, 15 years, You know, I think everyone's realized, including policymakers in the United States and Europe, and other markets are starting to wake up to some of these issues in real time as well, that, oh, it's not that, it is bigger than that.
Our current system in the US of sort of that a privacy policy is all you really need. Tell people in a privacy policy is somewhere on your webpage and that's all you need to comply with the law. Everyone has agreed now that that's not enough, right? You have to give better notice, more transparency, more control. And I'm encouraged to see the people who are engaged in the process of trying to figure out how to deliver that more transparency, more control, both from a policy-making point of view and also from a technological point of view. This is an issue that's now extraordinarily global. And you've got a lot of expertise in other places, particularly in Europe, and there's going to have to be a lot of coordination between people like our regulators here in the United States, those in Europe, those in Asia, those in Africa, to determine what those rules should be.
How fluent do you think users are about their privacy choices?
There are a lot of assumptions made that young people don't care about their privacy anymore and that there's a generational shift. There has been research actually by privacy experts that have shown that that's not true, that what people are more concerned about is control. So there are some people who are very concerned, some people not. Some people are not well educated. It's certainly a matter that requires a lot more public education, just like you teach kids to look both ways before you cross the street. You know, I think from a very early age, we need to have consciousness about how different technologies and different choices presented to us by the various platforms or tools we use, how they affect our lives and what the consequences are.
Do you think there's been a generational shift in attitudes to privacy? What's your take on it, given some of the recent activities that Google have been involved in?
Right. You know, there's a quote that often gets thrown around when you go and talk about privacy, and that's Scott McNealy. Which company? I'm sorry.
Sun.
Sun. Thank you. The CEO of Sun, who said, "You have no privacy. Get over it." Now that was 2000, year 2000, 2001, somewhere in there, and it is constantly rolled out as an example of the attitudes for how privacy might be seen going forward. And in fact, there's certainly been quotes from my CEO, amongst others, that have been pulled out of context to bolster that theory. But I don't think anyone, certainly not in my company, actually thinks that. And what we actually see is an enormous interest in privacy, just along slightly different angles than a previous generation.
So Harriet, a lot of these companies are IBM's clients. What would you have to say to companies from other industries about what they should be thinking about privacy? What questions should they be asking themselves?
It's really quite simple. It's about stewarding data. Data's now become an asset for many organizations. Think about, the latest edition of a car, the sneakers, whatever. The monetization, the business model properties associated with increasing amounts of data and how you manipulate it and use it for value to enhance the consumer relationship, but also perhaps to create new streams of income. That's the game, ladies and gentlemen. In the business world, that's part of the game. There's a lot of money going to that, and there's a lot of activity there. Part and parcel of that evolution is going to be, how do I manage that data in a way that wins me the trust and the standing and the compliance that I need to have as an organization in the communities in which I interact?
In China during the Olympics, there was a new system rolled out based on this new protocol IPv6 so that buildings could be controlled for their energy and lighting and so on in a very finely grained way. That was the same system that was running the surveillance and security system for the Olympics. And so, this is another kind of issue, I think, that the community needs to be thinking about when working on technologies and trying to integrate technologies that do really great things, also thinking about how else is this technology being used, and is it being implemented with the controls, the considerations in advance, so that it doesn't get used in ways that you wish it hadn't been used.
We actually see a lot of the concern that people express about privacy, getting back to what people are trying what's the underlying concern, is about the relationship to government. Government, after all, is the entity that can do things like take actually your freedom away, can take your rights away, can lock you up. And they're worried about how government might access all this explosion of information. And it's something that, at Google, we're concerned about, not just in this country where we have our policy debates on these issues all the time, but worldwide, we've certainly seen governments make use of these tools as part of a repressive regime. And it's a big concern for us. We have an online transparency tool where we try to show where our users' data is being accessed, when we get requests that we are forced to comply with because we have to obey local law to operate. When we have to turn over data, we try to bring as much transparency as possible. We hope that that'll be something that catches on to bring a little bit of awareness to that side of this going to, I think, going to be an increasingly large issue.
Yeah.